Can people hear me? Yeah. Good afternoon. Good evening. How's everybody? Full up on pizza? Yeah, it was very yummy. Thank you for whoever provided the pizza. And thanks, Nick. Great talk. Um, I was invited to talk here tonight, and it being the first customer intelligence meetup, I was kind of thinking, what can you do? So I kind of probably took the easy option. I'm going to apologize. So I just thought I would give some of my top tips for starting a customer intelligence practice in any organization. Okay. So these are just over the years some of, I suppose, the things that I've come across that have happened, and how you might get around them. So I suppose, first of all, to introduce myself and my company. I work for a company called the Anlaytics Store, which we started in 2009. Myself and Brian McInerney started the organisation. And basically at the time, I had worked in a number of different companies. I had worked for a company called SAS. Some of you may know it. It's a nice statistical analytics software. And essentially, I just wanted to do lots of analytics. So I decided I'd start up my own analytics company and just go and do lots of analytics. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. So we work mainly in the Irish market, but we also have some customers who work abroad. We work in all kinds of areas to do analytics. So fraud, credit risk, and customer intelligence are probably my expertise. Brian is a lecturer in UCD, so he works with us on the training side. So we develop a lot of bespoke in-house training programs for different organisations to help them develop their in-house analytics capabilities. So Brian would work with me on that side of the business. So we basically work with companies, helping them develop analytics strategies and processes and skills within their teams so as they can develop in-house analytics practices. So I suppose my top tips. So we're going to talk a little bit, and I think one of the questions there was talking around the idea of the customer journey. Thinking about planning your analytics strategy around that journey. And it's really putting the customer at the center of your analytics strategy. So thinking around the customer journey and what analytics do you need throughout that journey. So we'll talk a little bit around that. Close the data loop. And I think Nick actually talked about this really well. I mean, you kind of come to a place like Zalando and you go, oh my gosh, they have so much data. How much fun must that be? But then you go, oh my God, the headache. So it's that idea of no matter how much data that you have and no matter what the infrastructure that you put in place, it's really, really important to think about how you are capturing data. And as we can, previous talk, just like the whole idea of like data lakes, like, I mean, there's a huge amount of infrastructure, huge amount of technology out there to enable you to collect data in a uniform-ish kind of way. But thinking about within your analytics process, how does that work? And what's important about it. So I think it's really, really important. And one of the things that I see people falling down on all the time is that idea of closing the data loop. And it's what we do. I'm a firm believer that you cannot outsource analytics. Talking from the analytics consultant who runs an analytics company. But I really, really, really believe that you need in-house analytics capabilities for your analytics to work. So we'll talk a little bit around that. And then people talk a lot about prediction. I go on site and the first thing everybody says is we want a prediction model. And I'm like, well, you know, what do you know about your customers? Tell me about your customers. They're like, no, we want a prediction model. And people get very excited about advanced analytics. And now all I'm hearing about is deep learning and yada. So I want to talk a little bit about, don't underestimate the power of like simple pattern detection, unsupervised learning models, segmentations, market basket analysis. All that nice stuff is all really, really useful and sometimes much easier to implement. So if you are struggling with your data lake and all of that data, sometimes a nice, simple segmentation implemented, closing your data loop, getting your information back, and actually learning from it creating insights and helping your organization make decisions is much more effective than sitting around struggling for months on end with data trying to get a prediction model up and going when you never really get out of the blocks, because simply you've so many blockers. So we talk a little bit around that. So just in terms of the audience, what types of industries are people in? Is it mainly retail, banking, telco, or a big mix? So I suppose retail, there's a few retail, and is that mainly online or is it? Oh, okay. Oh yeah. And then I suppose everybody else, insurance, customer analytics, in. Oh, okay. So just, I suppose, think a little bit around your customers, how your customers interact with your organization. So obviously in an online business, I mean, there isn't ever that kind of personal interaction, but depending on the type of organization you have, it may be different. So I suppose think about the customer journey, and no matter what organization you are, okay, you need to think about customer, first of all, being a prospect, becoming a new customer, an established customer. And essentially, there are two things that we generally want to control. If you talk to anybody, if you want to think about business, think about customer journey, and think about a business making profit, you can make two things longer. Get people to spend more money or stay longer as a customer. And they're basically, I suppose, the two axes that I always put up on this chart. Get people to use your product for longer or get them to spend more. And that's how you make profit. Okay, so in terms of thinking about analytics and thinking about where analytics fits into that customer journey, and really importantly, thinking about your strategy in terms of, okay, I'm starting an analytics practice. Where do I start? What do I do? What model do I start with? Everybody's probably going to tell you to start with churn, stop people leaving, but it's not always a good place to start. So one of the things that I like to get people to think about is really think about what's the point of using analytics throughout that life cycle. So what are the key things that you're trying to do? So essentially you want people to stay longer, you want them to spend more. And the way you can do that is you can think about communicating with your customer, using the relevant channel at the relevant time with the relevant offer message. And this isn't new, okay? This has been around forever. And I suppose if you're developing an analytics strategy, for me what's important is when you're answering these questions, thinking about where do my models fit in this process, okay? And for you guys, thinking about, so, you know, when a customer is a prospect, you know, I'm trying to gather information about the market. I'm trying to understand if somebody's likely to spend money with me as a customer. Are they likely to become a customer? What are the types of models that we can use in that instance? So things like recommender systems, segmentation, sentiment analysis. There's lots of nice analytics and things that you can do at that point in the customer's life cycle. Then as you move to the life cycle, you need to start thinking about at different points in time, what are the different types of models that I'm going to use to essentially give me information about my customers, what they're likely to do, and then I can make a decision, is that a good or bad thing? Okay? If they're likely to leave, not so good, I might want to do something about it. If they're likely to make a purchase, I probably want to leave them alone and let them make that purchase. Okay? So really thinking about at the different points in your customer's life cycle and your customer journey, what are the models that you're going to need to build? Okay? And you walk into somebody and you say, what models do you want to build? And everybody probably start with churn. But I think sometimes in where to begin, a good question to ask yourself is, where are the biggest pain points in your business? Okay? So if customers leaving is a big pain point, churn isn't a bad place to start. Okay? But if acquisition is a problem, okay, and actually once you get customers through the door, they tend to stay, then do you really need a churn model first? Okay? So when you're thinking about planning your analytics strategy, look at the different models that you can use to interact with all of that customer data to make decisions about your customer, and then think in terms of your business, in terms of what you need to achieve, what order you should do these in. Okay? Does that make sense? So it's one thing that I think people just sometimes forget is not to really think about developing the strategy and think about all the different things you need to consider and the models. So I suppose the next one is closing the data loop. And I have a really simple version of this. I'm sorry, Nick. You had a much better talk around all of this. And I do talk about just having that central store. Now, I make this simplistic because I live in a very privileged world. I'm the analytics girl. I go in and do the analytics. So I expect somebody to deliver that data to me. If they don't, I give out. And I give it back, and I wait for it to come back. So I really do. I am like the spoiled brat of analytics. I just get served data and get to have lots of fun with it. But I think it's really, really important, as Nick was saying, to really think about how your cycle and working through that life cycle and working through a model cycle, how you basically are capturing information from the customer in the front end, how you're using that to build models, how you're then using that to push decisions about your customers, capturing those results, and then using that again. And I think it's really important to have that closed loop. Think about, so, I mean, if you select some customers and apply a couple of models, so here I'm like, you have value segmentation and a churn score. And based on those two models, you make a decision about a customer. So you decide you're going to contact them, not contact them, you decide how you're going to contact them, and basically you possibly contact them, you offer them something. Okay? It's really, really important that somehow you capture the result. And that sounds really simple. That sounds, oh yeah, of course, that's easy. Okay? Don't underestimate how difficult it can be sometimes to get people to capture information when they are making sales or when they're on the phone saving a customer. Okay? Particularly depending on how they're incentivized. Okay? So if they're incentivized by the number of sales they make or the number of calls they make, they're not going to be worried about how clean your data is. So just be really, really aware of that. That it's a lovely little box, gather results. But I think it's probably the biggest breaker in this chain. It's the one thing that people don't always consider. You know, oh, let's run a campaign, let's do a campaign, great, let's push it out, brilliant. Our campaign was fantastic. How successful was it? Oh, well, we didn't set up a system to capture any results. Okay, and then we can't really tell, all right? So it is amazing, and it never, I have to put on my not shocked face when people do things like that and go, yeah, if you don't look shocked, They did what? You forgot to collect the results? So really, really, I think it's the weakest link here. And it just keeps going around. It just perpetuates. Okay? And then thinking a little bit about the type of models that you have. I'm going to talk a little bit around there. I have segmentation and churn, so one unsupervised, one supervised model. So do think a little bit around how you want your models to interact with each other and how they're going to work together. So really important, just think about how you're going to capture that information and make sure you're capturing it. And if you're not, figure out a way to do it. Okay? So my next point kind of does me out of a job, but hey-ho. I really fundamentally believe that, and in like 15 years working in the analytics industry in Ireland, I've seen so many times where, and I think particularly in customer intelligence, where people have been sold models, they've been sold intelligence, they've bought an idea and a concept, and sometimes just because of a lack of understanding, somebody didn't ask the right question, they get left with a model, the vendor, whoever produced it, leaves, and the model doesn't work. Okay? And a lot of times it's not big things that are wrong, it's just little tweaks. But when you don't have those in-house capabilities, all of a sudden, what can sometimes be quite a considerable spend can be an absolute waste of money simply because whatever it is just doesn't work. So having in-house capabilities is really, really, really important. Building your teams, building the skill sets within your teams in whatever capacity you have, with whatever budget you have. You know, we do training with organizations, and we build out training programs with them, and I'm always saying, like, use what you have. Like, there's lots of really good online courses now. You can do hackathons. You can have lots of ways of progressing the skill set within your team. I think Nick was talking about kind of having workshops with the business, helping the business understand analytics, helping the business understand how to use analytics, using different processes to help them kind of extract what they need from analytics from the business, and then hopefully developing good solutions for the business. All of that is learning. All of that is fostering an analytics culture within an organization. And I think to really use analytics, to really embrace the best of analytics, you need that skill set in-house. And it's hard and it's expensive and all of those things. But I think it's really, really important. So whatever way you can manage it, try to do as much of it in-house as possible. Every so often, you know, calling in consultancy companies can work once you're managing the process, once you understand what you're getting back, and once you understand where it's going to fit within your business and how it's going to work. I think it can really work, and I've seen it work, and I've seen it work very well. But if you don't have those skills, sometimes you can just be left with things that don't quite fit the bill. So just be careful. And it's probably one of the biggest wastes that I've seen in terms of spend, is people spending money on analytics that just, for whatever reason, didn't work. And then my last point is, don't understand pattern detection or unsupervised models. Okay, so of the audience, how many people actually build models, do lots of analytics? Okay, quite a number of you. So the rest of you probably work with teams that are doing similar type functions. So I think it's really, really important to always think about, when you are looking at a business problem, to look at all the possible solutions that you could possibly use to help an organization with that problem. Okay? And sometimes as analysts, and I'll hold my hand up and say, yes, me, we like things to be complex. We like things to be hard. We like getting in lots of data and using whatever tool it is we're using, but, you know, it's like, oh, I'd love to try now random forest and that. It'd be great. Yeah. So I'd love to, you know, maybe a neural network might work, and you're going, they really just need a decision tree, or even before we get to prediction, they really just need a segmentation model, or actually a little bit of market basket analysis might work. So really, really important, and slide I have here is just a diagram, is sometimes just understanding customers, just doing some exploratory analysis on your customer data, just understanding what's going on can be really, really beneficial. And until you really understand from an exploratory point of view your customers, I don't think you're necessarily in the best place to start the whole fun of prediction. And it's happened a number of times where I found myself in organizations where the CEO has been to a conference, he's come back, and he's heard about the wonderful results of some company, and they've, I don't know, increased revenue or decreased something or done something, and he's like, prediction. We need predictive analytics. And I get the call up when I go in, and I'm like, okay, fine, you know, what's the problem? And And I remember going into one organization, and it was actually I was subcontracted in, so the project had started, and the idea was there, and we were building a churn model. And I was like, okay, fine. So I went in on day one, and I was like, okay. So I was talking to one of the guys. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm figuring out how many customers we have. And I went, oh, okay. I kid you not, right? And I was like, okay. So how many customers, why is this a question? And he goes, well, the estimate is somewhere between 800,000 and 1.2 million. I have to figure out which it is. And I sat there going, really? These people don't need a churn model. They need some basic reporting, some good exploratory analysis, and a segmentation to start with. But somebody had sold them a segmentation or a churn model, so off we went. And it was, in my career, I've had like big learnings from the positive. This was probably my biggest learning from a negative perspective, in that we built an all right churn model, but it never saw the light of day because the business had no idea how to use it. We ticked the box, so the head of IT could run up the stairs to the CEO and go, we have a churn model. Everybody seemed happy. I seemed confused. And it was one of those moments in my life where I went, you know what? If you walk into a customer and they don't know how many customers they have, walk out the door. Because, and it's this idea that people think that analytics should be complex and hard all the time. Sometimes the simple stuff, done well, implemented well, actually can reap really, really good rewards. And yeah, there will come the day where you need the complex models. There will come the day when you have a data lake and you've lots of data and lots of different customer interactions, and actually prediction or, dare I say the words deep learning, type models will be what you require. But don't forget about also the easy stuff, but sometimes the more easily implemented models, because they'll be easier to get going, be easier to get data for them, you won't need history, and you'll probably be able to reap some good results, and really important, to keep the business happy, and maybe possibly at some stage be able to tell them how many customers they have. So I hope that was useful for you. My details are on the slide deck because I'm sure we'll be passing it around. So if you want to contact us for anything, feel free. But other than that, thank you.
Hi, that was great. Thank you very much. I've got two questions. Yep. In terms of closing the data loop, you talked about some of the challenges in getting the agents that are interfacing with the customers. Have you seen any good ways of tackling that you could share with us?
I think the best thing when you're designing an analytics solution to fit into, it's what I call a decision space. So let's say it's like a call center. Go down and actually sit in the call center. Go and look at how they interface with the information, with the data, and kind of see how they currently use data, how they currently make decisions, and then think about when you're architecting a solution, one that fits into that. Because sometimes we tend to sit in an office or far away from where the actual decisions are made, and we just look at the world. And if you just look at the world from data, sometimes it can be very hard to visualize how it's going to be used. So I think it's actually one of the easiest things you can do is actually go to the person who's making the decisions, whatever it is, sit down, look at how they make decisions currently, and then think about how your solution is going to fit into that. Because if you can make their life as easy as possible and interfere as little as possible with how they currently do things, you're much more likely to get a good result.
Okay, that's good. And the other thing is you had a term market basket analysis, and I don't know what that is.
So basically, another way, it's association analysis. So it's looking at what combinations of products people buy together. Okay. Is basically, so there's a really good analogy. People talk about the nappies and beer example, that people talk about all the time. Okay. So it's just
saw the rest of them.
So that's just that one. Okay.
Or a comment or anything else. Some of the approaches you mentioned there around unsupervised learning, I've used that type of approach, and it's really good when organizations don't know where to start. Particularly, let's say if you can, let's say, do, just as an example, let's say you can do RFM analysis across customers, you can do proportional spend across product categories, and then, for example, apply K-means. And then on top of that, then you can maybe, for example, let's say build some visualizations and then have some visualizations built into segmentation. And that's a really quick win, and it won't take 6 months, if you know what I mean. And then people see a result. So I think it's a really good approach.
Yeah, no, and I think so. And the other really important thing to do is then over time map your segments.
Oh yeah.
So what you can start to do, and again, it's closing that data loop.
Yeah.
So monitor then what segments people are in and if they're moving, and then all of a sudden your segmentation becomes almost like a heartbeat of the organization. If you're looking at your segment analysis, you're seeing, our segments growing, our segments shrinking. Is the value of a segment increasing or decreasing? Is the spend per segment?
And there's different types of segmentation. So for example, let's say you could do value-based segmentation or behavioral segmentation, and then what you could do is you could take them types of models and integrate them with a traditional data warehouse on let's say a daily basis. And then that means that people can build visualizations on top of their business and actually look at the transitions from segment to segment over a period of time, and then they can then assess how to actually treat their customers going forward. Yeah,
and people talk a lot about Tesco and Tesco Club Card. Actually, a lot of the modelling that Tesco did behind their Club Card was segmentation. They basically just had layers of segments on top of each other, and basically they called it basically customer DNA. I think they had like 150 segments, and basically where you were in the segments. Each segment depicted you. So actually, they use very little prediction.
Yeah, and it's just like just a very small comment. Is that, let's say if you do RFM just as an example, right? You can actually give more of a weighting to the monitoring or more of a weighting to the frequency. But it's a really good talk. Thanks very much.
No problem.
So, just a short question. Where do you stand on this concept of net promoter score? And telecoms companies love it, but do you think it's up to?
I think it's like anything. I think relying on any one piece of data is always dangerous. Personally, I think it actually, I think it can be useful. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to do. But I think it's one of these things that sometimes gets a bit oversold. I've seen in organizations like posters, like in elevators, that their net promoter score has increased by 1% or 2%. Woohoo! And there's like a big, like, shiny, happy person. And I'm like, is that within the degree of error? And I'm like, 1%, like, really? So I think sometimes it can be overused, but that it definitely has use. And I think it's kind of been proven. But I think to rely solely on one piece of data when you have so much information about your customers.
My experience, I've worked in the telecoms industry, is that telecoms companies rely too much on it. They put all their eggs in the NPS and depend churn propensity based on it. But sometimes they're measuring completely the wrong things. They're only measuring sentiment without actual experience on the ground. You ring any of mobile operators these days and ask the customer care, do they understand the menu system in the IVR? And best within 5 minutes you'll realize that they don't understand it themselves. I've had these experiences of frustration with telecom companies. So it's a reflection on how badly they've implemented their systems without thinking about the data, in my view, at all.
Yeah, and I also think it's how things are sold sometimes. Because then again, it's external vendors come in and tell you, we have this one magic metric. It's going to solve all your problems. And people go, great, I'll take that. And they sell it really well. And then somebody buys it, and then, they've spent a fortune on it. So then they have to use it. I do think it comes down to that a little bit. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but on its own, I think it's not necessarily a good way to go.
Hi, so I come from a product marketing and sort of branding background. So what I found interesting was that customer journey and then how analytics can get involved in that. And obviously one of the big things that's being discussed in customer journeys right now, particularly with a lot of online and offline and mobile marketing and everything, is this kind of customer journey loop, or almost like a spider web, where it's not linear anymore in any sense, and it's not even a loop. So I was curious, I really liked the model that you had where you had the different predictive things up the board specifically because it makes it more understandable, but I was curious as to what you'd recommend for using for analysing, say, customer loyalty or customer advocacy and any of those sort of aspects of the customer journey.
Yeah,
if you can.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the data that you have and the type of organisation that you're in. So things like customer advocacy and customer loyalty for, like, let's say a telco, where you have so much information about somebody's network. Like, you can see who they're calling, you can see their friend network, their social network from who they're calling, and then you can look at how trends change within networks and things like that, so you can really see who's the advocate within that network, and because you have that information. You know, if you don't, I think it can sometimes be hard to measure. So it's really looking at the data that you have, the type of organization that you are, and how you, whatever business questions you have. So even define, like, what's loyalty? What does a loyal customer look like these days? You know, is it a customer who stays, you know, X period of time? Is it a customer who actually stays for a short period of time, but by God, they spend while they're here? So what, you know, and defining that from a business perspective sometimes, and then seeing, well, how can we understand that behavior from the data? And then more importantly, how can we measure it? And then as we do things in the business to try and make customers become more loyal, can we measure the effect of those? And then maybe have models around, you know.
Yeah.
So it all starts with, you know, you are hamstrung by the data that you have.
Okay.
And depending on that is really depending on how far you can go. And there are certain industries where you have so much data, it's like, woohoo! But you may not be in that situation.
Okay.
So does that help?
Yeah.
Hi, just a quick one. Great talk. Definitely agreed with the vast majority of it, especially the piece around using kind of simpler analytics techniques and unsupervised methods. I've come across great value in that. It's like anti-consultancy twist, I think, to some of the stuff. It seems like there's some unethical consulting practices out there. I suppose I just wanted to kind of ask you around the trade-off in, so a lot of the points raised around getting external help. So obviously the advantages in external help is, you know, you have someone trained who's worked in the area for a long time. They can come in, deliver something. They've seen it before. They've done it before. They know what they're doing. Can a lot of those issues you brought up be mitigated by almost like an ethical handover process and ensuring that there's a maintenance or there's responsibilities on the contractor to ensure the thing works after the end of the project?
Yeah. I think, and it's a little bit flippant, I think used properly, external consultants can really help your analytics process and your analytics journey. You can expedient, you know, you can just get to places much faster when you have a whole bunch of experts to do it. And I think you're right. I think in things like the contract. So I know, like, so many years ago, you know, over the years I've seen that, you know, the end point is the delivery of a model, right? That basically you spec this model, you deliver a model, you've done your job, out the door. And I'm like, oh, hold on. Until that model actually makes a decision or is used to make a decision within the organization, it hasn't done anything. It's just, it's purely academic. So, and I think you're right there in terms of the legalities. It's that the project should end when decisions are being made.
What's in use, yeah.
And when it's, you know, it's actually physically being used. And I think there are some simple things that companies can do around that, but then they need to know that.
Yeah, because I've come across the situation where I've talked to kind of business intelligence team leads that want to do exactly what you're saying. They want to grow a data science capability, but they just can't get the people. They're just like, you know, we're in a cool office here now in Zalando, and there's Zalando jobs around, and, you know, they look great. And then you go to some other still big companies, but that are far out of Dublin, can't offer the same salary, don't have the same attractive package to get that talent. They really struggle. That, like,
I think one way is doing some training in-house, and then do some training first.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of idea of what you're talking about, and then go to your vendors. Because I just think, you know, I've just seen it so many times where people have just been sold bad services, and spent colossal, like, you know, analytics isn't cheap. Let's be honest. You know, and I don't mind. But I'm not going to pretend that that's a bad thing. But people do spend massive amounts of money, and it's, you know, it kind of breaks my heart because the amount of effort that people put into it, and companies. And the other thing is, then people bring the analytics. It's like, oh, analytics doesn't work in our organization. I'm like, no, bad analytics doesn't work. That's different. So I just think you need some education.
Absolutely.
And
no, I'll disclaim all of this. I'm like a filthy consultant. I'll
but I do think when it's done well, where I've seen it done well, is where there's good in-house knowledge, and that the analytics consultants are supplementing that, and that it can really actually work really, really well in those cases, and that companies can really get places really quickly, by getting in.
Few good consultants out there. They're so hard to find,
I know. No problem.
Cheers. So that was all for tonight. Thank you so much for attending. If you like it, just please tell your friends and your colleagues. If you want to become a speaker, just please drop us an email. Just from the organizers and from Zalando, thank you so much for being here tonight. Cheers.
That was the golden ticket.
All right, throw this back in.